You're going to do exactly what I tell you, you insolent little black girl, or you can pack your things. Manager Kevin Torres grabbed Natasha's arm tightly, dragging her toward the back of the Elegance restaurant, away from the security cameras. Natasha Williams, 28, never imagined that her 2-year job at Chicago's most prestigious restaurant would end with her being humiliated for refusing to accept a bribe from an influential customer. Senator Richardson had left an envelope with $5,000, asking her to forget that he saw Kevin tampering with receipts. She had simply said no. "Please, Mr. Torres, let go of my arm," she said, with a calmness that further irritated the manager. "I will not accept dirty money, period." Kevin growled, pushing her against the wall of the narrow hallway. "Listen here, you stuck-up little black girl. You think you're better than everyone else? That you can lecture me?" His face was red with anger. "You're just a waitress I took pity on and hired. People like you should be grateful to have a job." What Kevin didn't know was that Natasha had recorded every word on her cell phone, hidden in her apron pocket. Over the past 6 months, she had systematically documented every racist comment, every corrupt scheme, every abuse of power she had witnessed in that place. "Let's have a private chat in the bathroom," Kevin whispered, squeezing her arm even tighter. "Maybe you'll understand your position here better after I explain exactly how things work." Natasha took a deep breath, maintaining the composure she had learned over years of dealing with men like Kevin. "You don't want to do that, Mr. Torres." "Oh, I don't?" He laughed cruelly. "And who's going to stop me? Your little husband, that failed mechanic who can't even give you a decent life?" That's when a cold voice cut through the air like a blade. "I would say you should let go of my wife, immediately." Kevin turned and paled. From the dark corner near the back entrance, a tall man in an impeccable suit was walking toward them. His eyes were cold as ice, and 2 intimidatingly large men accompanied him a few steps behind. "Alessandro Moretti," Kevin muttered, recognizing the name everyone in town knew, even if they had never seen his face. Natasha smiled for the first time that night. In 3 years of marriage, she had never revealed at work that her husband was one of the most powerful people in Chicago. She enjoyed her independence, building her own reputation away from the shadow of his influence. But she had called Alessandro 2 hours earlier when she realized the situation was escalating dangerously. Alessandro stopped a meter away from Kevin, who was still holding Natasha's arm. "You have 3 seconds to explain why you're touching my wife." Kevin let go of Natasha as if she were on fire. I didn't know. It was just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Alessandro tilted his head, his tone dangerously calm. "You called my wife an insolent little black girl and dragged her to a secluded place against her will. That seems pretty intentional to me." Natasha watched the scene with growing satisfaction. For months, Kevin had treated her as if she were inferior, nothing more than an unimportant waitress who should accept humiliation in silence. Now seeing that arrogant man tremble before her husband, she realized her strategic patience was about to yield far greater rewards than any direct confrontation ever could. If you're enjoying this story of justice and revenge, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how an underestimated waitress turned months of humiliation into the spectacular downfall of a man who thought he was untouchable. Alessandro took a step forward, and Kevin instinctively backed away, stumbling over his own legs. I didn't know she was your wife, Mr. Moretti. It was just a misunderstanding between employees. Nothing serious." "Misunderstanding," Alessandro repeated slowly, savoring each syllable. "You just called my wife an insolent little black girl and dragged her to a secluded place against her will. That seems pretty intentional to me." Natasha watched Kevin crumble before her eyes. For 2 years, that man had treated her like trash, making racist comments disguised as jokes, touching her back inappropriately, and cutting her pay whenever she questioned anything. He saw her as a disposable black waitress with no connections, no power, no importance. "Look, Mr. Moretti, I can explain all this. We can come to an agreement, Mr. Moretti. I have valuable information about other restaurants, about competitors." "Information?" Alessandra smiled coldly. "Kevin, you're offering information to the man who has known everything that goes on in this city for years. My wife wasn't here to uncover secrets. She was here to document evidence." Kevin was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his situation. He hadn't been caught red-handed. He had been studied, cataloged, and documented like a laboratory specimen for months. Senator Richardson will be delighted to know your transactions have been recorded, Natasha continued casually, as will Judge Morrison, Congressman Walsh, and that construction mogul you've been facilitating for over a year. Kevin felt his legs buckle. Each name Natasha mentioned represented not just a lost client, but a powerful person who would now become his enemy when they discovered they'd been exposed because of his incompetence. "Please," he whispered, the arrogance gone. "I have a family, children." "Funny you should mention family, because that's exactly what you should have remembered before you laid your hands on mine." What Kevin didn't know, and what Natasha was about to reveal, was that the last 6 months of documentation had not only exposed a corrupt manager, but they had mapped out an entire network of corruption connecting politicians, judges, and businessmen in the city. Using elegance as the hub for their illicit transactions, every humiliation Kevin imposed only strengthened something within Natasha that he never saw, a quiet determination fueled by the very injustice he tried to normalize, proving that true intelligence does not manifest itself through shrouding or confrontation, but through strategic patience and meticulous documentation, transforming each humiliation suffered into irrefutable evidence for the most satisfying execution of justice possible. 6 months later, Natasha stood on the main stage of the Chicago Convention Center before an audience of over 2,000 people. Mayors, business leaders, social activists, and college students rose to their feet in applause as she received the National Anti-Corruption Award from the governor of Illinois. It is an honor to recognize a woman who not only exposed corruption, but completely redefined our understanding of how prejudice and privilege fuel criminal systems, said the governor, handing her the gold plaque. At that moment, Kevin Torres sat in a federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, serving a 15-year sentence for money laundering, racial discrimination, and criminal conspiracy. His desperate attempts to get a reduced sentence in exchange for information had failed. There was simply nothing he could offer that Natasha had not already meticulously documented. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had granted full custody of their children and completely reversed the divorce settlement. The $50,000 embezzled from child support, plus interest and penalties, meant that Kevin would leave prison already owing more than $200,000. For 2 years, Natasha began her speech, her voice echoing perfectly throughout the packed auditorium. "I was treated as invisible by a system that believed it knew my worth based solely on the color of my skin and my profession. But invisibility can be the greatest superpower when used strategically." The audience laughed softly, but there was a deep seriousness in her words. Cameras from CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC captured every gesture and expression, broadcasting live to millions across the country. In the front row, Alessandro watched his wife with undisguised pride. Beside him, Michael Santos smiled discreetly, remembering the day Natasha had proposed working undercover. They had hesitated, concerned for her safety. Now, she was considered one of the most influential women in the United States. Operation Clean Plate wasn't just about arresting criminals. It was about proving that underestimating someone based on prejudice is not only morally wrong, it's strategically suicidal. Senator Richardson had been sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Judge Morrison lost his robe and faced prosecution for corruption. Congressman Walsh saw his political career destroyed and his assets confiscated. 15 influential businessmen in the city had lost their business licenses, government contracts, and reputations built over decades. Every person who participated in this scheme underestimated not only me, but the ability of a black woman to be smarter, more prepared, and more strategic than all of them put together, Natasha said, her voice growing intense. What Kevin would never discover was that Natasha had declined offers from 6 universities to take up chairs in criminal justice and undercover investigation. Instead, she founded the Williams Moretti Institute for Combating Corruption, an organization that trained investigators nationwide in techniques for infiltrating and documenting white-collar crime. 3 months after the arrests, I was contacted by Harvard Law School, Yale, Stanford, and Northwestern. They all wanted me to develop curricula on undercover investigation applied to social justice. Alessandro had legitimately expanded his business, transforming Elegance into the first of a chain of restaurants certified by the Federal Bureau as corruption-free establishments. The brand had become synonymous with transparency and business ethics. Maria, the Mexican kitchen employee Kevin had humiliated, was now the regional manager of 3 restaurant locations.
Jessica, the harassed sommelier, had opened her own wine consulting business, with startup funding discreetly provided by Alessandro. Kevin Torres once told me that I should be grateful for having a job, Natasha said, pausing to let the irony sink in. Today, I generate jobs for more than 300 people through our institute and the companies we help certify. The transformation had extended far beyond her individual case. Chicago had implemented the Natasha Williams Act, requiring all commercial establishments with more than 20 employees to undergo independent audits for discrimination and corruption every 2 years. During those 2 years waiting tables, she said with her voice thick with controlled emotion, I learned that true strength doesn't come from shouting when we are wronged. It comes from turning every humiliation into evidence, every disrespect into documentation, every moment of anger into calculated strategy. Meanwhile, in his cell,